You know, today would have been the better Friday to a degree, for at least for the chapter for it to snow, considering that this is about snow in Elbath. Sad snow. But it's not. It's actually quite sunny out today, which is nice. We still have a bunch of snow on the ground from last week when it snowed. Kind of twice. So we're dealing with that. But that's fine. Our frickin' neighbors don't know to shovel their effing sidewalks, so that's not fun when I'm trying to walk him. On a happier note, I found a couple of things. Or at the very least, I made a couple of things. So, a couple weeks ago, we got the art releases for the Gura Gura no Mi and the Tori Tori no Mi model Phoenix. And I finally had the chance to make them out of perler beads. So, first up, come on, let go. We have the Gura Gura no Mi. This actually has, so this part down here, I actually sliced into it with an X-Acto knife and like kind of chopped it up to make it look a little more rough. And then there's like black lines on here that are just paint to make it look more like the cracks that are in the art image, because that would have been something that would have been really freaking hard to make when doing the perler beads itself. So that's the Gura Gura. And then the Tori Tori no Mi model Phoenix. I think they turned out well. I also made another devil fruit that's going to be a more, fan-made one. That's one of the other ones that I designed, but I'll get to that in a video eventually. I've got like 2 other ones waiting to go up, so we'll see. The other one that I did, the other thing that I found, is a necklace. Found this at one of the Christmas tree fairs that we go to. That's like, local charity event type stuff that we've been going to for like as long as I can remember. And I found this in the jewelry, and I'm like, oh, that's coming with me. That looks almost exactly like Bonnie's necklace, because I love Bonnie's necklace from the one that she gets from Vegapunk. That's a gift from Kuma. So that is that. Now we'll go into the chapter. Yes, I know I talked a lot before we even got into the chapter, but this is kind of a shorter chapter. It's like 13 pages, I think, which is not a bad thing. Although I think I don't know if there was an announcement that came with this one or not about like something to do with Oda or whatever. I know we have a break next week, so we have chapter 1168, Elbath Snow. So first we just have a nice little cover page. We have Hachi, the octopus fishman. And he is on some winter island at the moment, and he is outside shoveling snow with his, 6 arms, shoveling snow with a bunch of shovels. And he's got a nice coat on him, Takoyaki 8 coat, that's a reference to his takoyaki stand. And then he's got it's a 6-arm coat, so he's warm, but his hands are not. So we have several sheep come over, and they brought him hot chocolate and gloves. So that way he has enough gloves for all 6 of his hands, which is adorable. And I just think that's so cute. Because I just love that. That's just so cute. Hachan is so cute. Now we're going into the chapter. So we're essentially picking up pretty much right where the last one left off, with Harald had, he's been given the mark of the shallow sea contract, and now there's giants going into the Marines, and so we're kind of getting some of the aftermath. So it's 15 years ago, the same year, and it's all over the world, and it's Harald's efforts are paying off. Whether or not they're paying off in a price that he's willing to pay is prepared to pay is left up to be decided. Side answer: no, it's not a price worth paying. So we're just cutting around to a couple of different random little kingdoms. These may have been ones that we've seen before, but, random little kingdom. It's just like, those giant marines are really doing a good job. They're so reliable. Or just like another one. It's just like, I always thought they looked scary, but now I wouldn't mind meeting one. So this is 15 years ago. We know that the Giant Squad got implemented several years prior when, Harald, joined, kind of became more of a lapdog of the world government. He doesn't see himself that way. He sees himself as just like, I'm earning a spot for my country with my own efforts. It's like, oh, Harald. And I stated this before, and I will continue to state it. I understand where Harald is coming from in wanting to try to build this better and more inclusive future for Elbath and the countries outside of Elbath, with the countries all over the world, to build up better relations with them. I fully understand where he is going with that, and I understand him wanting to kind of fix the image that giants have around the world with this, with them being so scary and monstrous and everything, from stuff that lingers from the ancient giants from so long ago, and from the various raiding parties of giants that would go out, like the, Harald in his younger days, 100 something years ago, and other various things like that, along with, to a degree, Dorian Bragi, but they were more violent towards other pirates, not towards civilians, which is something that Harald states, has stated in the past, that Dorian Bragi were, they had better relations with humans than Harald did. Still want to have something where Dorian Bragi, not Dummy Reversied, interact with Loki. They've met Hyrule, we know that. But have them interact with Loki would be interesting. And just be like two other giants that kind of knew his dad in his younger days. And be like, yeah, no, you kind of remind us of your dad. Gee, that's something I always wanted to hear. Type of thing. But, so I get to a degree where Harald is coming from. And to a degree, wanting to become a member of the world government. And something can be very similar said about Otohime, about, her wanting to have her people become protected by the world government. But there's two different levels here. Otohime is coming from this place where her citizens have been enslaved so much and have been, reviled, treated as monsters and as others and everything for so long. She is trying to essentially raise her kingdom up and wanting to go through a ton of that stuff to try to, help her kingdom in that regard. Not that Harald isn't trying to help his kingdom as well, because they're both coming from a similar place of that. But the other thing that we see with Otohime is that she didn't grovel. She, yes, saved Milzigard's life, which of course we know to a degree paid off in the end. That helped, but she wasn't groveling to save his life. She was protecting him because it was the right thing to do at the time, and because she didn't want to instill more hatred and fear in the children of humans, and the children of Fishman Island, from humans, than there already was, because of the former slaves who were attacking Milzigard. She understood where their anger was coming from. She did not deny their anger. But she then used the fact that he now owed her, not in a manipulative way, but he owed her now, and she went up to the surface with him, and she spoke her case to probably the Gorosei, possibly to, I don't remember if that lined up with a Reverie year. It may have, I'm not sure. I'm blanking on what year that wound up in. I think it was 12 years ago in the story that incident happened, so it would have coincided with the Reverie, I believe. So there's that. But then there's also the question of, she was giving her request to the world government, but to the kings and queens that were the representations of the world government. And they were viewing it as a different way, because I don't think Emu probably did have a hand in that, most definitely. Because, we know that later on it was just like, yeah, there's Fishman Island, yeah, it can become member country, blah, 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 we'll recognize it, and it can, have the benefits, go for it. Emu definitely knows that there's something going on with Shirahoshi because of Poseidon. So that wouldn't surprise me if it was something that Emu was just like, we'll be a bit more friendly toward them. He is playing Harald like a fiddle right now. Emu is playing Harald like a fiddle. And we're going to see that happen here until the fiddle starts to fight back. So we're getting some of those differences there between Otohime wanting to bring Fishman Island in, but she's also not wanting to get rid of Fishman Island's, culture and everything else like that. Whereas Harald, and this is unfortunately something that has happened throughout history with, one country colonizing another, regardless of who's colonizing who. It's usually white people, to be fair. That, they try to squash out the other culture. Harald is, like, to a degree, throwing away a lot of his own culture. It's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, yeah, let's maybe not do that, and I'll touch on that later. So, went on a longer rant than I wanted to, but back into this. So we have more citizens, and they're just like, there's like a chef who's just like, can't you get us stocked up again? Elbaf seafood is super popular right now. And he's like, I bet it is, to the salesperson. The salesperson's like that. So it's just like, they're just like adoring this great food from Elbaf. And then we see Umit, who is someone who owns the shipping company. He's the shipping magnate in the One Piece world. It's just like, this here is top quality Elbaf cedar. And it's rare, and it's a rare and tricky item to import. And we see someone else who's just like, I'll take it already. So it's, getting trade from the world government. So we see that, getting trade from Elbaf, trade goods and stuff like that, seafood and, the cedar, which is not the Adam wood. This is cedar. This is just some of the other trees that grow on the island. We saw a lot of other trees that grow on Elbaf. This is not the Adam wood tree. This is not the tree from, the Elbaf, Adam wood itself. This is a different wood. Not the same thing. Although, because of that could explain how Franky ended up being able to get his hands on some of it later on, is that maybe at some point in time during all this, exporting, some of that made it out. Cutting to Elbaf, we have Harald giving this big speech. And we've seen Harald give speeches before throughout this flashback where he's like talking to, the citizens of Elbaf. And some are more receptive to his ideas than others are. And in this case, by this point in time, the majority of the citizens seem to be more accepting of his ideas. So he's giving this big speech, and it's just like, when we finally become a member nation, I think we should build sightseeing ships so our people can freely visit all of our allies. I'm going to hand it to Harald. That is a very, very good idea. That is a very good idea. We have a company here in America, here in our world, I cannot see it. It's called Viking Cruise Lines. It's great branding. You don't have to change a thing. So this is a very good idea of being able to have the people from Elbaf, a lot of whom may have never actually left the, Elbaf, or like the oceans around Elbaf, the sea around Elbaf, that warland area, or they may have never left it beyond, a little bit. But having them be able to then go and visit other countries, like, say, Dressrosa, for example. I don't know if we saw anything about him having any communication with Dressrosa, but them being able to go to Dressrosa would be interesting. Dofi is not in charge of Dressrosa at this point in time. It would still be King Riku, because Dofi didn't get in charge there until 10 years ago. So they got another 5 years before that happens. Riku would probably be fine with some of this. Hyrudine's going to end up there later anyway as an elephant toy. And help. So there's a few other bits. I agree with this. This concept here is, I think, a very good one because it would involve other Elbathians, other giants, going to other islands and learning about these different cultures and seeing a bunch of these other places. And I think that is a very good idea. Also, finding ways to bring people from outside of Elbath to Elbath to let them see what's going on. Bear in mind, we still have that like warning from Willie Arnott about that. About, don't linger in Elbath too long. Don't exactly know the full meaning of that yet. There could be a time dilation thing. There could be something else. We're not sure yet. We'll see. And Harold continues. We're actually a rare minority from the perspective of the outside world. I mean, technically, yes. We don't know the full population of Elbath, but even if there happened to be, 1,000,000 giants on Elbath, I don't know. Given the size of Elbath, that's a possibility. Even if there ended up being a couple 100,000, giants on Elbath, that's still a good chunk of a population. But there's lots of other islands out there that very much outnumber that. Alabasta, I think, had I want to say 10 million people, but I could be wrong. It was 1,000,000 or 10 million. And at various points, Oda has listed populations for other countries, but not all of them. And, so it's just yes, as a whole, Elbath, the giants are very much outnumbered, even with other pockets of giants around the world, like from where Ida was from, or where Saul was from, or some of the other, I don't remember if those are the two main giants that we've interacted with that weren't from Elbath. And there's the possibility they're from the same community of giants. They just ended up leaving Elbath so long ago, or possibly split off from Elbath, because of, the Void Century, and they've kind of, integrated enough with other societies that they don't, with other cultures, that they don't really consider themselves to be Elbathians anymore, even with Saul's line having the Will of D in it. And we're going to see Saul in this flashback in a little bit. So we get some of that. And Harold continues. But there are many nations out there with a wide variety of races coexisting. Okay. I'm going to actually say, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Big Mom does a better job of having a lot of the races coexist than the world government does. Because, yes, for Big Mom, because Pudding would be about a year old at this point in time, and Pudding, of course, gets made fun of and ridiculed because of her eye. Other people in Totland probably get ridiculed because of various other things. It's just oh, you're really weird. We can't make fun of this person because they have, long arms or long legs or a snake neck, because there's a lot of them. But you're freaky. You have 3 eyes. So that's really freaky. Type of thing. Or your brother has a weird mouth. We're going to make fun of him because of that, even though nobody remembers that anymore. Type of thing. So, I mean, at this point in time, we know that the fishmen are still ostracized because of, Fisher Tiger, and we know that the Sun Pirates are out running around at this point in time. And, it's just snake necks and long arms and long legs and, 3-eyed tribe and, a bunch of others, that are various, races of humans, they are all still very much being sold as slaves. So they don't really coexist in a lot of places. We know that the long arms and the long legs have been at war for who knows how long at this point in time. Other places, other ones are, ostracized or seen as monsters, different things like that. So there's unfortunately a lot of that. We know the minks aren't. The minks are still fairly isolated at this point in time, although again there were pockets of minks in other places around the world besides the ones who lived on Zoe that were probably cut off from Zoe at various points. So Harold, you're a little, looking at these through rose-colored glasses, and he continues, it's this is thanks to a culture of mutual respect. Even in our world, we still have issues with trying to figure out mutual respect for other cultures without degrading them. And he's just like, let's join the larger world, make new friends, and grow in knowledge together. Okay, I agree with him there. As someone who has grown up in America, and they have like, the whole melting pot of just like everything congealing into one type of culture. No, it's the other variation I've heard of is like the salad, where it's just like everything is worked together, but nothing is destroyed in the process, type of thing. It's everything working together in layers of like all these different cultures working together, as opposed to becoming one homogenous culture that the world government is kind of turning them into. And we see the other giants here. A lot of these giants were probably children when Harald started a lot of this stuff, or they grew up during a bunch of this time frame of him trying to, expand and make better relationships with other countries. I can't argue with Harald about wanting to make better relationships with other countries. That is a wonderful idea. That is something that people in our world need to work on doing much better, that leaders in our world need to do better without trying to, destroy another country's culture or suck up to a different leader, which is unfortunately what Harald ends up doing, as he sucks up to the world government. And like we see them, it's just like, that sounds great. So like they're all cheering and happy about this. And he continues, we're one step away. Our future has never been brighter. So he's just like so excited about this. And we see another giant just like, yeah, let's ditch this warrior crap. Ida's going to address this in a little bit. So I'm going to wait for Ida's words to kind of discuss that. And we see Harald here, and he's just like, I'll make it happen, Ida, is like what he's thinking. And we cut to the Walrus School, which has been built. And we see several kids outside playing, just having fun. None of these are the kids that we have seen now, or at least I don't think any of them are. This would be 15 years ago. And then we see like Harald's out here, and he's sitting and talking with Saul while they're like looking at the school, and Harald's like, this is all thanks to you, Saul. And Saul's like, better sharp kids than sharp blades, huh? Dare she. So yes, Saul has been building up this school, building up the Walrus School and everything, finding other teachers, Ripley and, I don't remember the name of the one who was the librarian, and like, Blade and like a bunch of the other ones, the Walrus principal and stuff like that. Finding a bunch of them and like building up this school to, be able to help teach the next generations of Elbaf kids, more about, reading and writing and math and different things like that, which again, not a bad idea. So I'm going to bring up a cultural reference for pop culture, and B, an actual historical reference. So there is the movie The King and I, that is, well, there's several variations of this movie. And they're all based on a book that came out in, I believe it's 1944, I believe, that is based off of true events that have very much been embellished and fictionalized about I believe it's in the 1850s, in Siam. There is a teacher, Anna Leon Owens, who goes to Siam, and she is hired by the king of Siam to come and teach his children, to start having them learn more about outside cultures and like the British cultures and different things like that. And, she does. And later on, there ended up being a book that was called Anna and the King, that was a very much fictionalized version of this that very much messes with stuff. But she did teach the royal children and stuff like that, and ended up, affecting how they grew, and, teaching them about like, the outside world, and that brought change to Siam, some good, some bad. And then there was a movie that was based on the book, and then Rodgers and Hammerstein got a hold of it, and they made it into a musical that is The King and I. And then they ended up, of course, that was, the musical stage play version, and then that got made into a movie later on, and then, of course, there's been other variations and iterations of this story, and then there is an animated version that I actually wanted to do a review on for my movie reviews. But unfortunately, I can't, because I can't find a good place with good pictures from it that would give me enough pictures to be able to talk about the actual plot of the movie. But it's a very interesting thing that is a little bit compared to what's going on here, where it is like these outside influences coming into this very established country. And the country not wanting to appear to be barbaric, but having a lot of customs that they are very used to for the past several hundred years, for, very long history of Siam. And, now there's, this outside world that is encroaching on their borders, and these threats from the British and everything else like that to, join the British Empire and different things like that. And, it's like, how do you make that decision between trying to appease this power to prove that you are not violent barbarians, and being able to keep part of your own culture, the parts of your culture that are good, and still remembering why you had the other parts of the culture, but understanding why it is now time to move forward and how things are done, which is one of those questions that, like, Harald is having to wrestle with throughout this whole course of time. And that's why he is very much to the point where he is ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the thing is that Saul was a Marine. He saw a lot of what the world government was capable of. He was freaking there at the Buster Call of O'Hara, which is why he's here now. And the process, why he's here at this point in time, is because of what happened on O'Hara. And he is very much trying to, preserve that legacy. And part of that involves teaching these next generations of the Elbathians, so that way they can learn, so that way they can carry on part of that knowledge as well. And so the knowledge of O'Hara doesn't die. And there's that wrestling question there. So we have them, they're continuing to talk, and Saul's like, but ain't you afraid you've lost something here, Harald? It's like, yeah, better sharp knives than sharp blades, but isn't it, aren't you afraid that you're losing some of the really good things about Elbath? And Harald is just like, I don't believe that military power is what makes a country strong anymore. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you there. Definitely military power is one of the things that can definitely help build up a country. But if that is the only thing that your country has going for it, is military power, then that's not a good thing. Having arts and sciences and technology and manufacturing and, goods that you can export and so many different things like that. And even, the people that you can send around the world to, learn and bring people into your country and different things like that. Those are the better benchmarks of a healthy culture, of a healthy society. And that's something that a lot of people in not just this country, but a lot of countries kind of need to learn. And Harald is just like, yeah, no, forget about all that warrior culture stuff. We're not going to worry about that anymore. I don't want to deal with that anymore. All of that was bad. That made us look horrible. There can't be anything good that comes from this. There can't be anything good that comes out of that anymore, because all of that has led to pain for me. We're going to get to that because of what happens with Ida. And, Saul's just like, I don't think that that's the best way of doing this. Just getting rid of all of that history is not good. Losing that history, forgetting that history. Because, again, it's the whole thing of, like, those who refuse to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Which is one thing that is definitely something that needs to be definitely better taught all over the world. Of, like, those who do not learn from history, who do not learn from the mistakes of the people who came from before them, of their ancestors, or their forefathers, or forebears, whatever you want to call them, that do not learn from those mistakes for how they treated their enemies, how they treated their allies, how they treated people above and below them in society, is something that is going to then cause problems for people today who are refusing to learn about that history, and therefore it will repeat itself. And Harald continues, and it's just like, it's because of Ida. She taught me everything. Meeting her was the greatest blessing of my life. And we cut to a grave, and it is Ida's grave. And it is just surrounded with these beautiful bouquets of flowers. And it's, like this nice peaceful day outside, and it looks so pretty. But it is very sad because it means that Ida definitely is past. Also confirms that probably Shirahoshi is Mosa, so it's not, Ida that, Loki is talking to on the Den Mushi in the present. So, we do a slight flashback in the flashback to where we cut back to when Ida was still very sick and bedridden. And we have Harald there visiting her, and she's like, "Hey, Harald." And like we see outside the building, outside of the tavern, we see Hyrudine and Rode and Goldberg and, Gerd and Mato and all of them, like the Viking doctor that was there, or the Elbath doctor that was there. We see all of them outside. I'm probably waiting to go in and visit her. And which is going to be doubly tragic in a minute. Mostly for Hyrudine, but still very tragic. Loki is not here, though. We'll get to where Loki is in a little bit, because, of course, at the end of the last chapter, he burned down his biological mother's village and probably killed a lot of the people there. So Loki's kind of locked up at the moment, unfortunately. But we cut inside and we see Harald and Ida talking. And she's like, Elbath really has changed a lot. When I first came here, there were tons of internal conflict. It was scary, but you've changed everything. And we just see like how, she's just like, again, we're getting the size comparison for, how big he is compared to how small she is. And she's like, now children can laugh and study instead. It's like a totally different country. And he's like, the old customs, our backwards traditions. All of those bad practices from the warrior era will be thrown away. And it's going to be, depending on how the official translation ends up for this, but like it's probably going to be something similar to that of like, chucking the baby out with the bathwater would be the best, colloquial term with that, of just like, we're going to get rid of all of the bad, even if it pulls some of the good with it as well, because we're not going to worry about that. Everything that has to deal with that must be bad. And Ida brings this up. She's like, oh, but I kind of like the whole warrior's pride part. It's really cool. You should cherish your culture. So, and of course, Ida is coming in at this as, coming from this as someone who, she was very much kind of, ostracized by a lot of Elbathians, by a lot of the giants when she first got to, Elbath, so many years ago when she first got there, and of course when she had Hyrudine and everything, that didn't help that Harald wanted to make her his wife, his queen, and all of that, and the elders were against it and everything like that. And I'm just like, as I stated in the prior chapter, it's like, okay, I can understand, like, after Estrid dying, that maybe it's like, okay, it's a little too early to try to be like, okay, no, I'm going to marry Estrid, or I'm going to marry Ida now. I'm going to marry Ida now. And what would have been a better answer would have been, okay, you go through the mourning process of losing Estrid. Then you announce that you are going to be marrying Ida. But you make it that Loki is still the crown prince and he's still first in line to the throne, with Hyrudine being second in line to the throne. And then, because Ida would have frickin' raised Loki to the best of her abilities, just like we see that she has done throughout the course of this flashback. She has still treated Loki like her son, and she still considers him her son. And she definitely would not have been like the evil stepmother who would have tried to raise her own child up in power. That's not the kind of person that Ida is. That's the kind of person that Estrid would have been, or that Estrid was, had she lived and been the roles would have been reversed. She would have been trying to raise her child up in power to, prevent, just like the people in her village that were just like, oh, well, if he marries Ida, then we lose our inheritance. What freaking inheritance are you talking about, dude? I don't know what you think that means. But it was selfish and greedy, and all of that stuff is what led to Ida's death here. But Ida, she was very much ostracized by a lot of the country, but there were so many people in the country who welcomed her in, who were just like, oh no, it's fine. She can come and stay here in the fishing village or in the western village. It's not a problem at all. We'll gladly bring her in here. It'll be fine. See? We're good. And they helped her. They helped take care of her. They helped take care of Hyrudine. Later on, they supported her when she built her tavern. Yes, they were the ones who attacked her and Hyrudine, during the famine, but that was a very small minority that tried to go after her and everything, and the rest of them did not agree with that. And, and she's like, the warrior pride thing is, she thinks it's cool, this concept of honor, that part of that like chivalric code of like, you protect those who are weaker than you stand by your allies, you stand by your friends, the all for one and one for all type of thing, like a bunch of that stuff. You fight to the best of your ability for the cause you believe in, but there's a lot of buts that come into that. And like, she's like, you can't just get rid of all of that. And Harold's just like, don't you get it, Ida? It's that very culture that kept us from marrying. I can't accept it. And she just like, Harold. And it's like, he is so... And again, part of this, I think, is like something to do with the fact that like, Harold, I like you, Harold, I do, but you're just so naive when it comes to dealing with various people who are in power. You're very naive when it comes to dealing with the Gorosei and the God's Knights, and you're naive when it comes to dealing with your own elders in your own country. You could have just been like, no, screw all of you. I married the woman you wanted me to marry. I had a child with her. She is now dead. The mourning period is over. I'm now going to go marry the woman that I love. Because if you're so wanting to get rid of all of those things and you're like, no, I am the king of this frickin' island. I am the king of this country. I am the king of the giants. I am the king of Elbath. And I am going to go and marry the woman that I love. Yes, Loki will still be the first prince of Elbath, and then Hyrule will be after him. But I am going to go marry the woman that I have loved for the past who knows how long at that point in time. But he didn't do that. He didn't have the guts, he didn't have the desire to stand up to the people who had been putting him in that position. And now Ida is sick because of it. Ida may still have ended up being targeted, but if she had had other people around her, and even, like, Ida probably wouldn't have been all that super interested in being queen to begin with. So there's that. She would have been like, I'm still going to go make this bar on the edge of the island. It's fine. I'll still do the queenly duties if I have to. But for the most part, I just want to be like this person that welcomes people to the country. Oh, yes, I'll take very good care of Loki and Hyrule and all of that stuff. And, she still would have done all of that stuff, I think. So there's that. And she's like, you always did say you wanted to make me your legal wife. Cough, cough. That really is the sweetest thing. You're so cute. What about Loki? And he's like, he'll always be Hyrule's kid brother, won't he? And Ida's like, in my heart, I've always thought of him like that. So, like, she's still, like, again, she has... Tilt this so you can see Chip on the side. She still views Loki very much as her own son. She doesn't care that he's not her biological son. My mom does the same thing when it comes to my sister, although the situation is kind of reversed where I'm the younger one and my sister is the older one. But, she's done that. I have cousins on both sides of my family that were, stepchildren or adopted into the family, and they are still very much viewed as, as cousins, even if they don't share blood with us or anything like that, they're very much still part of the family. And Ida is showing that she's like, oh, Loki's still my son. It's fine. He's still Hyrule's little brother, so therefore he's still my son, type of a thing in that regard. And she's like, feelings like that kept my heart full. It's what's kept me going all this time. But don't worry, it's okay. You're everybody's king, Harold. And, so she's kind of like laying back down. And she's like, you're almost there, right? And he's like, that's right, Ida. It won't be long. Soon I'll be connected with the whole world. Our world will be tens of thousands of times bigger. Then we can go traveling together, just like the old days. And we see this cute little flashback of them much younger, before all of this, before Hyrule, where it's just them way back at the beginning of the flashback. or it's just them so much younger and just carefree and happy and everything. And I think that's part of what's driving Harold to do this, is that he just wants to be able to go back to being able to travel around the world with Ida again. With Ida again. And that doesn't happen, unfortunately. She lays back down and she's like, that sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to it. What ends up happening is, she lays down and Harold's like, trying to hold her hand. And we see, of course, his hand's so big compared to her. And he's just like, me too. And then her hand just falls away. That whole thing where it's just, where she's gone. And Harold walks out of the building and he's just crying and he's got his eyes covered. And like Hyruddin is like rushing inside. And we see Gerd and Mato and Goldberg and Rode and Stanton's like off to the side and the doctor's off to the side. And we see like Ripley here and she's got like Scopper in one hand and like they've got little Colin with them. And I'm possibly Saul's around here somewhere. I'm not sure. We see a couple of other giants off in the background as well. But Harold is just heartbroken and, Hyruddin is, we see him running into the house. Hits a little harder with some of the other things that have happened in my life recently. But Hyruddin's in there and he's just bawling his eyes out because his mom's gone. And Mato's crying and even Rode is crying. And Harold's crying and we cut to where Loki is. And of course, because at the end of the last chapter, Loki had burned Estrid's village to the ground, the alcohol village to the ground. And Loki is now locked in this prison castle that they have. And he's just sitting there inside of this cell. And we cut to where we see a picture of the village that he burned down that is now covered in snow because it's snowing outside. And Loki just kind of, tilts his helmet down to cover, part of his face. And he's probably crying. Or is about to start crying. Hits a little harder just because of other things in my life recently, with my grandpa passing and with Brenda and all of that stuff. So we kind of head to 14 years ago, the Holy Land of Marijois. So we see Castle Pangea and we're hearing Shanks is missing. So this is Harold and he's talking to the Gorosei and they're like, indeed, had he completed his last mission, he would have been formally knighted. So as in, this is about a year or so. I think it's a year or so since, Shanks came to Marijois, kind of took up this guise as, one of the, wanting to reclaim his, godhood status, his, his, holy, celestial dragon status and everything. Wanting to reclaim that, become a god's knight and all of that stuff. And he'd been going out on missions and stuff like that. And given what we know, Shanks would have had to have already had his crew at this point in time and had, like, Uta somewhere involved in that. With, adopting her and everything. As, I went over in, like, the timeline of the last video. That he would have had to have, like, her and had, like, his crew built up already. But this would have been prior to him going to Fuchsia Village. About a year. This is now a year prior because it stated at the beginning that like Shanks and his crew had been in Fuchsia Village for about a year before before Luffy ate the Gummy Gummy no Mi. And Shanks, used that as like a home base for a year and then Luffy ate the fruit. So now it's just like, okay, well, Shanks has been a god's knight. or like a level 1 God's Knight for the past year or so. Year and a half, give or take. And he had been sent out on whatever particular mission this was, and he has not returned from it yet. So he probably was on a bunch of accompanied missions by either Shamrock or Garling or one of the other God's Knights, in order to keep an eye on Shanks and make sure that Shanks was doing what he was supposed to, upholding the ideals of the God's Knights and the Celestial Dragons and all of that stuff. Type of thing is probably what they'd done for a lot of his other missions. Now he was sent off on possibly a solo mission, and he has not returned from it. That he was supposed to go off on whatever mission this is. We might find out what that is, but go off on whatever mission this is. And then if he succeeded in it, return, and then he would be made a, given this promotion to the next level of the contract. And Shanks didn't show back up for that. He's like, oh, he's missing. Oh, well, that's not good. And bear in mind, to the rest of the world, Shanks is kind of a pirate at this point in time. And eventually he's going to end up with, I think it's a 4 billion berry bounty at one point in time. Soon in the story, and then that'll eventually go a little bit further up once he's, a member, once he's a Yonko and everything for his current bounty. So Harold is inside of the Room of Authority, and he's talking to the Gorosei, and the Gorosei are like, as you were our next choice, the opportunity now falls to you. What will you do? And Harold is just like, I'll naturally accept the honor of being one of the God's Knights. Being one of God's Knights, doing that will secure Elbaf's membership status. Just how freaking big is this room? And how big is Pangea Castle? And we see them walking, and they're walking through the castle because they're going from the Room of Authority to the throne room. And they're walking through the castle, and I love that, it's just all the Gorosei are like, and then Harold is just like, and he's walking through the castle, following behind them. They don't even come up to the top of his boot for how small they are. It's like, Harold, just misstep once and just go squish. Just squish. Oh no, it was a spider. Just say you thought he was a spider, and just squish Jay Garcia. Save some people some suffering. 14 years ago would have also lined up for when Ginny was captured by the Celestial Dragon, so maybe that was part of one of the missions. Or maybe Shanks was sent on that mission, or it was him and Shamrock or something were sent on the mission, or there's the whole theory about the twins swapping back and forth depending on stuff. Twin swaps, evil twins, good twins swapping back and forth depending on stuff. I don't know where I fall for that. I'm like, we'll see what happens. But that would have been one of the missions that the God's Knights would have been sent on. Shanks may have been a part of that mission. Maybe he decided, I don't want to be a part of this. And he used the opportunity to, go missing type of a thing. And then Shamrock or whoever else was there were the ones who got Ginny and then brought her back to Marijua, unfortunately. So we'll point that out here. So they're walking down the hallway, and the Gorosei are just kind of like, congratulations, then. The Great One has agreed to trust in you. It's been a long process. You'll be remembered as the king who brought great change to Elbaf. Yeah, whether or not that's going to be good change or bad change is bad. And then Harold is just like, well, to be honest. And they enter the throne room where we see the empty throne up on top of the dais. When Elbaf finally joins the world government, I plan to relinquish the throne. A younger, more vigorous ruler than I should take over. I'm assuming he means Hyrule because at this point in time, Loki is in jail. Or maybe he does mean Loki. I'm not sure. One of the two. Or an interim king or something like that. But he's just like, I'm going to relinquish the throne. And we see St. Peter, and he's just like, I don't know if that's gonna work with our plans. And then we hear, That is a matter for Mu to decide. And we see Emu has appeared on the Iron Throne. Well, it's based on the Iron Throne, on the empty throne. And Harald is just like, why? Why is there someone on the empty throne? So it's very similar to like Cobra's reaction to it. Although, again, to give you scale wise, to be fair, Oda messes with scale a lot in One Piece. Emu is still looking down on Harald from how high up the empty throne is. And Harald is one of the tallest freaking giants that we have ever seen. And he still is not tall enough to either be eye level or looking down on the empty throne. And Harald's just like very similar to the way that Cobra was, where he was just like very befuddled as to why is there someone on the empty throne? No one is supposed to sit there. What is going on here? And Emu is just like, come. Mu has been watching thee, Harald. And we hear, I'm assuming what is screaming from Harald as we cut outside of the castle, and just like this, there must have been like this huge power surge in the castle, and just, whatever scream from Harald. And we cut back in and we see the mark on Harald's arm that was like the compass circle with the cross in it. And then it has shifted to a slightly adjusted one that looks similar to the armband that we saw on Killingham. And it's just like this power. It's surging within me. It's chilling. And like Harald has been like brought to his, he's like, in pain as this is happening. And I will point out the line art on the pages are not finished, so I don't know if this was something that maybe Oda had a hard time finishing up, or maybe Oda wasn't feeling the best when he was doing this, or just like deadline stuff, because some of this is a bit more roughed out than it normally is, which has happened before. I wish Oda the best of luck and health and everything. And Harald is just like, it's surging within me. It's chilling. And we see the other Gorosei looking up at him. And Mars is just like, this is the power of immortality. And Warcury is like, it still sends shivers down the spine. And Ethan Barron he is now beyond any wild monster. He has been forged into a mighty weapon. And Harald, is standing up. And he's like, immortal? I can't believe it. And Emu continues. And Emu is just like, consider thyself an immortal knight. Consider thyself an immortal knight, sworn to Mu. Carve an abyss pentagram in Elbath. That will mark the bond between us. Yeah, Harald. Yeah, you go do that. That's gonna go really well. Oh, yes. And we cut to, Harald is on his way back to Elbath, and he's like, and it's, we still hear, Emu's voice, and it's just, thy dearest wish shall be granted. And Harald is just, he's just like so elated by this, and he gets back, he's on his way back to Elbath on the giant ship and everything. And it's like, as soon as this last mission is completed, Elbath will be recognized as a member nation of the world government. And he's just like, he's like telling the people, I have one final mission to do, and then we are members of the world government. And they're like, thank you, Harald, King Harald. And they're just like so excited. And we cut to Quest Castle, Oust Castle. And it's like, And he's like, we see the pentagram, the abyss mark, the star and the circle on the ground. And we hear, and Harald's because he's connected to Emu now because of the abyss mark. And it's just like, could you repeat that, great Emu? He's like, I misheard you. I'm quite certain of that. And we hear Emu, mobilize the entire nation and form a grand army of warriors. And Harald's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And Emu continues, The great warrior fleet will stand alongside the Marines and serve the world as... And Harald's like, no, wait, hold on. Everything I've done was to free Elbath from violence. Everything that I have tried doing over these last, 80-something years is to try to free Elbath from violence. You can't just do this to me, is like what he's thinking. And like his body is like forcefully pulled up from the throne. And he's being pulled toward, marionette on string, pulled toward the pentagram. And he's just like, of course, if anyone still wishes to fight, I gladly encourage them to enlist in the Marines. And we, outside the door, there's a couple of guards waiting, and they're like, who is the king talking to in there? It's like, what's he doing in there? What do you think he's doing in there, Fred? I'm not sure, Og. We're not sure yet. And then we see, Emu's eyes behind Harald, probably just shoving its way into Harald's mind. And it's just like, thou vowed to atone for Elbath's history, even at the cost of becoming a slave. And Harald's like, I meant to carry that burden alone. What happens when you make contracts with the devil, dude? And Emu continues, the burden of such history is too great for thee to bear alone. Now hold thy tongue. Thy cannot disobey Mu. And Harald, again, it's his body is being forcefully pulling him toward the pentagram. Because you frickin' sold your soul to the creepy thing sitting on the giant throne that no one is supposed to be sitting on. And you are given the power of immortality. I'm like, how stupid are you, Harald? Just, why do you do that? Why do you act like that? And he's being dragged across the ground by his own feet. And Emu continues, those who enter into a deep sea covenant may gain immortality and power, but it comes at the cost of total obedience. Thou wilt carry out Mu's orders, regardless of thine own will. And Harald's just like, oh no, this isn't good. And he's like grabbing onto his arm. And he's like, this isn't good. I'm losing control. Elbath, they never meant for it to become part of the fold. Curse that Emu. Yeah, Harald, you would have thought that after all of these years of you being strung along by the world government of one promise after another, that, maybe it would have landed on go kill the man that you consider a friend when it landed on rocks. Go stop him. Now we're going to have you go and slice up pirates just because they're pirates, not because they're possibly innocent, but because they're pirates. And now we're going to have you do all this stuff. None of the other member nations have had to do anything of the kind, because at this point in time, Emu and the Gorosei are seeing this as something for entertainment purposes. They are willing to see. They have Harald, and he has stated for so many years that he wants to try to make Elbath a member nation of the world government to help and enrich Elbath and enrich Elbath being able to communicate with other cultures and other societies and all of that stuff. That is not a bad thing. But Harald they've been literally dangling the carrot in front of Harald and then moving it away from him, moving the goalposts every single time. And it's Lucy with the football with Charlie Brown. It's that whole concept again and again and again. Sorry, my dad and I watched Charlie Brown Christmas Carol, or Charlie Brown Christmas the other day, so it was just like Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. And it's that whole concept of oh, nope, try again. Oh, nope, try again. Nope, well, no, we're not going to move the goalpost this time. Oh, nope, you missed it again. I'm sorry. No, you just keep missing, Harald. I'm sorry. And, it just keeps trying, Harald just keeps trying again and again. And the Gorosei and Emu looking at this is how far do we think we can make him fall in order to get what we want from him? Because we want complete and utter submission from him. We want complete and utter devotion from him. And to make this contract with us, because Harald is not being Domi Reversi'd in this. He was not Domi Reversi'd. This is different. Domi Reversi is something where it is against your own will, as opposed to, in the case of this, where I think you willingly have to allow the mark of the abyss, the mark of, the various covenants to be put on you. You have to be willing in that regard, as opposed to the Domi Reversi that is forced upon you. There is a difference there. And Harald is now realizing that, they've been dragging me along on this whole time. They've been trying to... They've played me like a fiddle. They have played me for a fool. And he screams out, "Guards!" And they, he's like, the plan was always to enslave the warriors of Ulbath. Yes, Harald, it was. Yes, it was. And he's like realizing that, and he like, the guards are coming rushing in, and it's just like, "What is it, your majesty?" Is someone, and they think someone's maybe in there attacking him. And he's like, "Chain me to this pillar." I'm sorry, what? It's like, "Hurry, summon Elder Jarl and my sons." And, "Chain me to the pillar." What? And so it's like, "But, sir, I believe Harding is still out at sea, and Loki, Lord Loki, that is still imprisoned after what happened." And Harald's thinking, "I can't resist for long." And it's like, "I can only resist so much longer." And it's just like, they're like, "What exactly is this concerning, your majesty?" And it's just like, "None of that matters now. Release him." It's just like, release Loki, release him. I don't care at the moment. This is far more important than what he did to the village. I'm assuming Harald or Loki did not tell Harald that the alcohol village poisoned Ida. I'm assuming he did not tell him that, or either Harald didn't want to believe it for reasons, because Harald is, I guess, the best way to describe that. So we cut to jail, Realm of the Dead. I think this is just the freaking castle that Rode had as his diorama set. And it's just like someone going to Loki, and it's just like, "You're free to go, Loki." What do you mean I'm free to go? What is going on here? And then it's just like, "Head to Out's castle at once. The king requires your presence." And then it's just like, "Jarl's house. Something urgent? What's going on?" And he's like being told, it was like, "You gotta go to the castle." And it's just like, and so we return to where this tale began. The day of the castle massacre, when Elbaf's most beloved king, Harald the Benevolent, lost his life. And we end the chapter with a picture of Harald with, it's the one that we saw that was like the portrait of him in the castle with like his horns ripped off already, the scars, and him with the sword and all of that. And we see that's how it ends. And we have a break next week. And yeah, this is not going to end well for Harald, because we know that he's going to die. And from the way that we saw it at the beginning of the flashback, it looks to be at the hands of his own guards. And it may have been something where it's just like, he has convinced them that he's gone crazy and they need to slaughter him. Or maybe it's Emu tries to do something and tries to possess Rox and tries to Domi Reversi him, or some variation of that is what possibly ends up happening. So there's like that whole concept there of just like, how freaking, how are you gonna make this work? What are you gonna do with that? All of that type of a thing. And I was trying to go back where I could look at what like that last page looked like of that chapter where we see Harald being... Because like this flashback is literally lining up for where we have it that like Loki and Harald arrive at the castle, or like Loki and Jarl arrive at the castle, and it's just like, how are you even here? Weren't you just freaking locked up type of a thing? And like they're showing up and it's just like, "I was summoned." And this explains why High Rooting wasn't there when this happened. We know that Shanks and Scopper are going to show up at some point in time here. We know that Harald, Loki and Jarl are going to make their way into here, and what they're going to end up seeing when they arrive is Harald being stabbed by his guards, and that is supposedly going to lead into a massacre. And Harald, Jarl and Loki are just like, "Oh my god." And like there's so much artwork of like, well, what's going to be happening when how's this going to play out? Like, there's stuff of, like, Harald being Domi Reversied and Loki being forced to kill him, and Harald trying to resist, like Rox did, because he doesn't want to end his own son, and, falling upon it, falling hoisted upon his own petard type of a thing. And, going through all of that. So there's that question there of like how much of that is going to be, there's other explanations that have to happen here for like Harald explaining what happened to him. Harald explaining how he ended up in this situation, and like Loki and what's going on with Loki and Jarl at this point in time, what's happening with like Shanks and Scopper, like them showing up at the castle and all of that stuff. And like, what happened to the devil fruit, what happened with, Jarl getting the sword plunged through his head and all that stuff. It's like, these are answers that we'll hopefully be getting in the next chapter or the next 2 chapters, depending on how this plays out. But it's that whole concept. And it's like, I'm watching, I was reading through this and it's just like, this definitely reminds me of something. And what it reminds me of is, at the end, in Avengers Infinity War, when, after Thanos snaps, and, his vision is he sees, he sees little Gamora. And, it's, the whole question of, did you succeed? Yes. What did it cost you? Everything. And in this case, it is literally for Harald, it's like, yeah, did you, it's like Loki and Ida and all of that stuff. It's like, did you succeed in what you wanted? Yes. And what did it cost you? Everything. It cost him Harald. For Harald, it cost him Rox, his friendship with Rox himself. It cost him Ida because he didn't try to, just like, you have access to the world's government. You have access to try to find doctors who would be able to hopefully help treat Ida. And you refuse to try to go and ask them to help you with it when you have them at your fingertips, that you could be like, hey, I know I'm working towards my goal of trying to become a member of the world government and everything like that, but like, the woman that I love is exceedingly sick. Would it be possible to get like a doctor or something here? I'm sure the God's Knights have a doctor of some kind somewhere within Marie-Joie that they would be able to be like, oh yeah, we got a doctor here. Give me a second. Grabs him, holds him up to Harald. Here, take him with you to Elbath. Doctor, help. And they just like take him to Elbath and heal Ida. Something like that. Law, if Law was around at this point in time and had the Apopnomi, which I don't think, no, he doesn't yet. He's around, but he doesn't have the devil fruit yet. He would be able to just like remove the poison from Ida's system. But that's not how that works in this regard. They don't have that here. And so it's like that whole concept of like, what did it cost you, Harald? You got what you wanted. You were about to be a member of the world government, and what did it cost you? It cost you your dignity. It cost you your friend when it came to Rox. It cost you Rox himself. It cost you the woman you loved. It cost you whatever type of a bond you had with your sons, because you didn't try to take them with you when it came to Loki and Hyrule. It cost you so much of your country's culture. And it's going to cost you your life now, because you decided that trying to supplicate, it cost you your dignity and your pride as well. Which, yes, there have been other kings and rulers throughout history who have like supplicated themselves toward the enemy in order to protect their people. And I'm not arguing with that, but it's this whole concept of like, Harald. Oh, Harald, I'm so sorry. And that's what happens. That's what it cost him. It was everything. And it's not a fun thing to figure out, but it costed everything. So that's what we have for this one. I'll have 1169 in like a week or 2. I'll probably have like a Devil Fruit or a movie review up next week. But that's what I have here. I thank you very much for watching. For a 13-page chapter, I still made it quite cutaways because I ranted a few times. But that's what we have. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.